If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to Why Write. Hi, welcome to Why Write. I'm your host, Angela Grout, and thank you for tuning in to an episode of Why Write, where we find out why writers are writing and why you should be writing too. Every week I bring on a guest that informs me, educates me, and inspires me. And today's guest is no different. I have a woman here from Springfield, Massachusetts, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Regine Jackson, and she is a poet, a prose author, and she writes things that incorporate mental health, inner city life, and womanhood. So, of course, that's all empowering to me. She facilitates poetry and open mic workshops, which we're going to learn a little bit about that because as a writer, you're going to want to get involved in that. She was the 2022 recipient of the Straw Dog Writers Emerging Writers Fellowship. Her work has been featured in many publications, including the Massachusetts Bards Anthology that was issued this year in 2024. She is the Executive Director's Assistant at the Pan-Africa Historical Museum. And she's an extreme advocate in the writing world, which of course, you know that's what I am too. She holds boards positions with the Art for the Soul Gallery, Take the Mic, and the Straw Dog Writers. She is the co-founder and executive director of the Cultural Connections, a celebration of Black and Brown literature. And we're going to talk to her about Flimsy Quill and find out all about that. I want to welcome to the show today, Regine Jackson. Regine, hi.
Hi, Angela. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming in. We met this past summer at the Right Angles Conference, which I have to think, I want to say it was at Mount Holyoke. It wasn't at Mount Holyoke.
It was in Northampton.
Yes, Northampton Arts. It was a great conference. And, you definitely left that impression on me of, just how much you help other writers and how passionate you are about your writing and your poetry. And I'm just glad that you decided to come on the show.
And thank you again for inviting me. I greatly appreciate being able to spread the word about some of the initiatives I do within the community and what I hope to do in the near future.
Yeah, you're definitely aspiring, to really advocate and help, I'm going to say women, but I mean writers, get their voice on a page, get their voice out there. And you've done quite a bit of poetry.
Yes, quite a bit of poetry.
And, using mental health, using our own experiences, whether it's inner city life or just how we grow up. For me, I feel like when I write poetry, it's healing. How does poetry relate for you?
Well, I'd have to agree. I find it cathartic to really get my thoughts and things that may be a bit jumbled and I may not be able to describe by my voice alone through words. So it has definitely been a therapeutic experience for me.
Yeah, and when I love writing poetry and I don't sit down sometimes to do it, it just happens. All of a sudden I'll be writing and break out into a poem. But reading other people's poetry really does help you to reflect back on your own life. And I think a lot of what you've done helps other people.
And I'd like to think so. The only hope I have is I can positively impact one person, if not many, and I hope and I hope that they can do the same for others. So it's a continual process throughout life.
Yeah, it's the whole one candle lights another.
Right.
It definitely is that. So I want to talk about this flimsy quill because I kind of teased the audience.
The
flimsy quill. Like, it's a cool title. It's something that you're passionate about. Tell us what the flimsy quill is.
The flimsy quill is an initiative. It didn't necessarily have a name when it first began a few years ago. It was after I became the 2022 Straw Dog Writers Guild Emerging Writer recipient, and I knew I had to give back to my community in some way. And taking on this moniker, the Flimsy Quill, I felt like a superhero. It wasn't Regine, who was usually quiet and more reserved. It was someone who can go out there and who could advocate articulately and effectively for their community and the things I stand for, which is empowerment, and that can involve self-esteem, self-confidence, and just knowing that if you see better, you can do better.
I love that. I mean, I think that's why, not that I'm hiding behind Why Write, but Why Write is not about Angela. Why Write is about, why people write, why we should write, why writers are writing. And with the flimsy quill, the fact that you're giving people this empowerment, of just the name, flimsy quill, I'm picturing the quill and it's almost like not strong enough to write, and you're saying it is strong enough, you're strong enough.
You might bend, but you don't break.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Ooh, I like that. We're going to bend you. We won't break you. Yeah, make everybody flexible.
Right.
I love that. So you teach classes, writing classes and things at Springfield Technical Community College. And I know you've done them for Take the Mic and My Reflection is Me is a workshop that you do.
Yes, that was actually my first time doing a workshop in collaboration with the Take the Mic program. I started out as, a board member with Ayanna Crawford. She's also my partner and the CEO of Cultural Connections, a celebration of Black and Brown Literature book fair. And I thought, why not take my expertise to these young women who I've seen, a few times in passing at different events in the area, and really bring them together to let them know who I am and the things that they can do, not just undertake the mic, which is more in the form of public speaking, but in the form of writing as well, which is equally important, if not more so.
So the Take the Mic program is about public speaking.
Yes.
And with that comes writing
beforehand,
because it's not just about getting up to a mic and talking, it's about preparing and having it written.
That is correct.
Which sounds like the flimsy quill will be able to guide that also.
Yes, and that's where we saw the collaborative efforts would be perfect, and we are planning on future workshops in 2025 for not only Take the Mic, but for different organizations within the Springfield area and hopefully beyond.
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So how did you get involved in writing?
That is an incredibly long story, so I'll try to make it succinct for this podcast. My mother was a clerk in a page across libraries all around the city of Springfield, and as an previously undiagnosed autistic young girl, I took solace. Yes, I was diagnosed with autism about several years ago when I was 20 years old, after years of mental health problems and people not understanding why I was the way I was, which also instigated other mental health problems, because when you don't have a sense of self, it really impacts the way you view the world. And so my mother, she was a clerk in page, and to keep me quiet and to keep me occupied and to give me something to do, she would just give me books. So by the time I would say in third grade, I was reading at a high school level. Through third to sixth grade, I read between 300 and 400 books throughout elementary school, and I have the trophies to prove it from thanks to Accelerated Reader AR. I don't know if they still have that nowadays in the school system, but I loved the Accelerated Reader program. I was able to print out, my little accolades of how many questions I got right on the book, and it also incentivized me to get out of my comfort zone.
Oh, so you're really good at reading comprehension.
Yes.
That's awesome. When did you start writing? Like, when did you realize that you could be like these authors of these books?
I would say I started writing around my teen years when I was a bit angsty. I needed an outlet again. There was that outlet, so I took to writing terrible poetry. I recently unearthed some raw poetry, raw, unedited, unabridged poetry, just detailing teenage angst and things like that. And I actually took a hiatus once I went to Western New England University for English literature. And I started back up again with a trilogy, a young adult trilogy I've since shelved. It was horror. I love horror, speculative fiction, fantasy, and science fiction. So I also write in those genres. And so I was writing a fantasy trilogy, based in Peter Pan, and it was going to be a bit on the darker side, dark fantasy, but due to my mental health problems, I then again had to shelve that. And it was only in late 2021 when I applied for the Straw Dog Writers Guild, and in early 2022, March 10th, 2022 to be exact, I remember getting the phone call, and I was shocked when they notified me I was the Emerging Fellow. That's when my passion for writing was reignited.
So we're jumping around, but that's okay, because I have so many questions that I want to ask. So you applied to be the Emerging Fellow at Straw Dogs.
Yes.
You won the fellowship.
Yes.
How did you apply for it? Like, what's the application process, and what did you do with that fellowship?
I actually just saw it on happenstance on social media. I was scrolling, just, doing a bit of mindless
I do that all the time.
And there's a local bookstore in Springfield called Olive Tree Books and Voices, and they just happened to post a flyer for emerging writers, and I thought, I like to write. or at least I knew I used to like to write. So why not, take a chance? I did not have any expectations going in. And so...
I love that. Like the universe just aligns.
Yes,
things,
yes, the universe aligns. And so I just applied. It was a Google form, I believe. I believe they've changed it since then.
Did you have to submit some of your writing?
Yes, I did. I submitted, I believe, 10 pages of my young adult fantasy novel, the dark fantasy novel revolving around a teenage girl going to save her friend in an alternate dimension where there are flesh-eating monsters called Peter Pans. And so, again, a bit dark. But I was so surprised that it hooked them in enough to first put me in the top 3, and then to eventually learn just a few weeks later that they had chosen me as the emerging fellow.
So what did you do for that, I'm going to say 1-year fellowship?
1-year fellowship. It felt so much longer than that now that I look back. I was introduced to different people within Straw Dog Writers Guild, including Jacqueline Sheehan, Maxine
She's
Schmidt.
been a guest on the show.
Yeah, Jacqueline is wonderful.
Yeah. She's actually teaches at our writers conference too.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I hope to make it next year. Fingers crossed.
First Saturday in November kicks off Novel Writing Month.
Really? It's Soft Novel Writing Month.
Yeah, so November has been known as Novel Writing Month.
NaNoWriMo.
NaNoWriMo.
There we go. There we go.
Sometimes when I say NaNoWriMo, people look at me like I'm talking, something, from Orc and Mindy or something. I'm aging myself. But, and November being Novel Writing Month, it's like a lot of people take on the challenge to try to write a novel in November. So kicking off it with a writers conference, the first Saturday has just been something I was like, yeah, let's do that, and empower people and get them tools to write. So Jacqueline anyways teaches that, and maybe next year you'll be here doing something.
Oh, that's wonderful, and I hope to be, attended just to see what you have. It looks wonderful, the lineup.
You and I are on the same page when we're trying to empower people to write. I mean, everybody's got that story.
Right.
Everybody's got something, whether it's an imaginative story or a real experience that somebody can learn from.
Right.
So now you've taken, I want to go back to the Emergent Writers Fellowship. So you took a year, you're writing, you're meeting people, you're learning more of the craft.
Yes, and it was mostly networking because the Emerging Writer Fellowship, it's a hands-off experience, but it can be hands-on if you want it to be.
Okay.
So they give you free reign to essentially do what you'd like to do, and they are just there in terms of guidance.
Okay.
They also offer, opportunities to speak at their Writers' Night Out. I was lucky enough to be able to, to read some of my work there, and that was my first time reading aloud some of my work to an audience.
Yeah.
And yes, I was nervous, but it was just empowering having this wonderful group of people who are just there to support you, and you're there to support them once they go up and take their few minutes to read their work.
So all of this really emerged in the last couple of years, and now here you're doing Take the Mic, and you're doing Flimsy Quill, and you're really learned so much from all that networking that now you're kind of just taking it on your own and giving back to the community.
Yes, and I think that's the goal of Emerging Writer, is to set the writer up to, to do what they would like to do, like whether it be just continuing on writing nonstop and writing novels, writing poetry, or taking the route that I did, which is giving back to my community in some shape or form while still doing my own personal work and enjoying writing in my, my personal time.
Well, just how you just shared that story about how important it was to read your work, out loud in the open mic style. That's something that, emerging writers, people really do, need that. Like, go to an open mic and to just read something. It's so empowering, like to even hear your own words coming out and hearing how people take them in.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Because you never know how things will be perceived by others.
Right, and it's always like, okay, whatever you're listening right now, it's a work of fiction. Just let everyone believe it's all fiction, whatever it is.
Yay for AWA writing style. It's not you, it's the narrator.
Yes, and AWA is the Amherst Writers Association, and they have really great rules and guidelines for writers, which is one of them that we were just talking about, is everything you write we treat as fiction, so that this way you don't have to feel like you're really exposing something.
Yes.
It's very vulnerable, especially when you're writing, and not just stories, but, poetry can be very, window to the soul.
Right.
And it's like, oh, did she really experience that? Or,
Makes people wonder.
Yeah. I mean, I've had people ask, like, obviously my book, Dear Baby Get Out, it's about childbirth. So, I mean, I have had 2 children. I have experienced that. But April Rain is a murder mystery. Like, have I experienced being stabbed 19 times? No. But I do have a friend who was stabbed 19 times. Ooh. So it's one of those, like, it's fiction, but a lot of that stuff in there really happened in my life. And it's like, okay, let's just treat it as a work of fiction right now. People don't need to know what's real and what's not real, But,
right.
A lot of it's real.
But now I have a book to add to my list for November.
Yes, read April Rain. Come on, we're going to make it a movie.
Yep.
Help me. So you're doing the fellowship program, you're teaching, you're organizing this Flimsy Quill organization to help people. You're still reading, doing Take the Mic. You're part of the Straw Dog Writers. I mean, you're doing a lot in this writing world. What is your goals for your own writing? And publishing. I know we have a couple books here, so if we want to talk a little bit about that and where you're going.
Oh, of course. Well, these 3 books right here, I will first take out Panoply because it is the most flimsy one. This is a collection by a local ex-poet laureate. She was Springfield Poet Laureate, I believe, just a few years ago, Maria Luisa Arroyo Cruzado. And
So I've been wanting to invite her on the show, but I don't know how to say her name.
She will help you say your name. Trust me, she will help you. She will guide you through the process.
It's a beautiful name. But so she organized this book, which is an anthology of all these writers, including yourself.
Yes. And that's actually where I was able to connect with her further and, sort of establish our connection and relationship for the future. She is such a passionate advocate for writers, especially women writers. Mm-hmm. And this is her, this is her first anthology of creative works. They are the collection of poetry, essays, and short stories, and I was lucky enough to be able to connect with some of these writers as well at these events, and some of them will be at Cultural Connections on Saturday.
Yeah, so Cultural Connections, let's tell everybody a little bit about this too.
Okay.
We have so much information to give you, Regine, and so Cultural Connections is out of Springfield, Mass.
Yes, based in Springfield, Massachusetts. It's Cultural Connections, a celebration of Black and Brown literature book fair, and it's to encourage confidence, self-esteem, and just knowledge of self in our community. Springfield tends to have a bit of a bad rep in terms of some news reporting and things like that, but we want to encourage people to look past that and see there's so much more to our history besides crime, besides Dr. Seuss, besides basketball.
Springfield's a beautiful city.
Is.
It's the whole all that's a little overrated, I think.
Yes.
You put the spotlight on something and then people tend to see that, but there's so much more in Springfield.
Sadly, the smallest attractors are the loudest.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to, just really encourage the fact that this is a community and collaborative effort. And we want especially our young readers, our young writers, and those who are just starting out their life and just starting to really appreciate writing for what it is, to encourage literacy in our community. And it's not just for our youth. It's a family-friendly event, so we have writers for all ages, from children to young adult to.
Are you giving writing prompts?
We are not giving writing prompts. This is more of a book fair, so it's not. So it's not really. It doesn't really consist of workshops. It's more of a book fair and an ability for our organizations. We also have local organizations like STIC. We have the MLK Junior Family Services. We have a few others, including Art for the Soul and Pan African Historical Museum, who are going out there to connect with our community to build those cultural connections.
So the cultural
future.
connection really is a lot of focus on literacy and getting people to read, which obviously we know how important reading is, because if you're reading 300 books by the time you're in high school, it's formulating how you're going to be as a writer too. So that's what we encourage. It's all about literacy. It's all about reading, and our goal is just to really create more readers, which will create a pipeline to writers, fingers crossed. Yeah. So you've also contributed to some of these books.
Oh, yes. This right here is A Queen's Narrative. A Queen's Narrative is a local organization in Springfield, Massachusetts for women as well. It caters to the self-esteem, the self-confidence, and, just building professionalism.
It's like heavy is the crown, and boy, us women, we do have some heavy crowns.
Yes.
Because our hats we wear, we multitask a lot, and no offense, men, I know you multitask too, but our crowns can be heavy.
Yes, and this was an amazing experience being able to not only recognize familiar faces within my community, because there are a few residents of Springfield who took part in this book, but just knowing their stories and hearing who they are as people and as women, and not just the titles that they carry, and not just the professional veneer that they have to have when dealing with people in the public and in society.
Yeah, I love that, because letting someone write their own narrative to explain who they are is very powerful.
Yes.
And you are kind of seeing, the Oz behind the curtain,
Right.
especially, when you have people who are in a public figure, but even, in the private sector, these women sharing their stories, because there's so much behind all of us.
Exactly. And in Heavy is the Crown, we deal with heavier themes, as you might ascertain from the title, like suicidal ideation, drug addiction, people who have lost their children at a very they've lost their children at a very young age, and it is all here in this book, and it's raw and it's unfiltered, and I would just appreciate for anyone to just sit down and read
and I know
stories.
it was edited by Nicole Young Martin, who is good,
amazing,
is an upcoming guest on the show. Yeah, and she does.
Black Writers
Write.
Read.
No, Black Writers Read.
Yes.
Sorry. Black Writers Write, Black Writers Read. And, she definitely does empower, the Black writing community, but I mean, all of us together are just empowering writers. It doesn't matter, color, sex, any of that. But at the same time, we kind of focus a little bit, I want to say a little bit on women.
Yes,
Yes,
it does seem to be that way, and I think it's because our experiences as women have shaped us, and we know what it's like to go through life as women. So of course, why not connect with those who we have those stronger bonds roots with.
Yeah, I mean, we all have few common threads that we can all relate to, which is beautiful.
Red threads of fate.
Yeah. Oh, I love the universality of what writing can do, bring everybody together.
Right, because you never know someone's story unless they tell you.
Yeah. So the horror, fantasy, sci-fi, crazy writing that you're doing, will you finish it?
Yes, I actually just finished I didn't just finish it. It's been a few months now, but my debut novel, Blackberry Delight. It's speculative fiction and, has a bit of horror elements in there along with suspense and thriller. And I was recently offered a contract by a publisher. I have not taken it yet.
Yeah, no, but it's always nice to get that
It's nice. It's always nice to feel wanted.
Yes, we like feeling wanted.
So, and I do appreciate them for taking the time to read my work. Running Wild Publishing, amazing. They tend to focus on marginalized voices and works that don't tend to get picked up by more prominent publishers, Penguin House, Random House, and things like that. And just knowing that there are people who do connect with my writing in some shape or form, that was such a powerful feeling. And my goal is to have Blackberry Delight published by 2026. That is my goal. I was hoping 2025, but I'm doing so much right now that I did have to compartmentalize some things on my end for...
That's always the word I'm using, compartmentalize. And I don't even know how to say it. I just have so many compartments with all these things in it.
Exactly. We can do everything and anything, but we can't do everything at once. That's what I've had to learn myself. I'm 27, and I thought I could be Superwoman by 27, but at this age, I'm learning who I am as a person still, and I'm going through, pivotal life events in my life.
Well, and it is important, and it's important for the audience to understand this too, is that when you're, and it doesn't even have to do with writing, it just has to do with all the goals that we have in life, and really starting to prioritize them and say, okay, what's first, what's second, what's third, and when you're writing, to submit for an anthology, or you're writing a book to get published, or you're organizing an event to run, it's like, okay, you want to do it all. But you have to prioritize, say, okay, when are, I guess we can use the words deadlines, or, when do certain things have to be done,
Right.
I mean, if you're a star baseball player, you want to kind of do that in your youth and not say, oh, I'll wait to be a star baseball player at 60. Like, there's certain times in your life you have to do certain things. And it's something that I don't want to say struggle, but it's something that I juggle with,
You're doing an amazing job with yWrite and your publications.
Yeah, I treat my own publications and all of my projects I was a florist for 30 years. I don't know if you knew that, but I ran a flower shop, and I would do, anywhere from 30 to 50 weddings in a year. So I have all my brides' files lined up. But I would, you can only do so much before the wedding when you're doing perishable products. Right. So it's like I can take all the notes for your wedding. I can make all the details. I can know exactly how it's going to go, but I can't start it until it's closer. Right. So I've been doing that with my novels and, with all my projects, saying, okay, what's my deadlines? I have my next book that I've been working on, and it's done. It's in beta readers. It's called Being in My Breast. And, that's kind of like right here. It's right here. But of course, with the writers' conference coming up, that's right here. So it's like things get trumped. And it's very important to prioritize, and here you've taken, a full year with this fellowship to kind of find yourself and to prioritize what's important, publication, helping the community, everything
in education. I've being around so many writers, I've noticed so many writers and authors happen to be educators, and that's also what inspired me to go back to school for elementary education, which is what I'm doing right now as well.
So I was gonna ask you, so where are you working?
Right now, I just work at, as a transcriptionist. Okay,
I was going to say, it had something to do with transcribing. So
yes,
I was like, what is
yes.
that?
So I get to type. I love it. I've been working remotely for about several years now, and this has been my first big girl job. I've had it since I was 27 now, so I just hit my 7-year mark, and I do enjoy it because it gives me the freedom to be able to write in my spare time.
And it gives you fast fingers.
Right. My typing skills have greatly improved since starting. And, and I appreciate, and while it may not be what I continue to do in the near future, I will always take what I've learned and the skills that I've honed from that professional job with me into, any future endeavors.
Yeah, I remember because when I saw transcriber, I was like, oh, is she transcribing from another language or, what? And I've actually had, years ago, my aunt, I would dictate as I was driving some of my books.
Really?
I would dictate, and I'd send it, and she would type it up. And I was like, and of course, for me, if I'm handwriting or if I'm dictating, I need to type it up because I'm editing at the same time because, Surrey's going to mess up our words.
Oh, right.
But, it's helpful to have that transcriber. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, I wonder if she does that. Maybe I can send her my stuff and you can do it. But yeah, I'm in awe of all that you do. I mean, you are empowering so many people and yourself, and I just can't wait to see where you go and what you're going to do because it's a lot and it's awesome.
Thank you so much. I just try to remain consistent and stick to my, to my core values, because it's so easy to get swept up in new ideas and new things. But again, like you said, prioritizing what's important to me at this moment, and then I can go to those future goals and those future endeavors when I have the time and capacity to do so.
I wish we had time for you to read one of your poems right now, but let's tell people where they can find your books, where they can get more information about you, and then maybe I can throw a link in and you guys can read one of our poems.
Well, wonderful. You can find me at The Flimsy Quill on Instagram, The Flimsy Quill on Facebook, and you can also follow and like our pages dedicated to Cultural Connections, a celebration of Black and Brown Book Fair, at Cultural Connections MA on Instagram, and Cultural Connections, a celebration of Black and Brown literature on Facebook. Oh, and you can also go on my website, reginejackson.com, which is currently being renovated. But fingers crossed, by the time you are seeing or hearing this, the renovations will be done and all of the hyperlinks will be there.
Yeah, website design.
Not my pro.
That's something I don't like writing, but we got to do it.
Right.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today and just giving us so much information about writing fellowships and being part of anthologies and just where to get help to, start writing and being readings and everything.
And thank you again for having me on here, and I look forward to listening more in on yWrite and, just keeping up with everything that you're doing, because you are giving a mic to authors who may not have the representation that they need to really get the word out there. So what you're doing, it is amazing work, and I just look forward to seeing what you do in the near future.
Here's to empowering writers, women writers, all colors, everyone. Let's just get to the page. Well, thank you, and I want to thank you, my audience, for tuning in to yWrite, and just always being supportive not only of the writing community, whether you're a writer or a reader, but being a supporter of my program here, because I just am loving having all these very interesting guests on the show, and it just inspires my own writing and my own creativity. So, this is the time in the show where I want you to pick up a pen and start writing. So I'm going to give you your writing prompt. And when the show ends, I want you to set your timer on the microwave or on your phone for 5 or 10 minutes and just let that pen flow. All right, so here's our prompt today. What can you do to help your community? How's that for a prompt? What can you do to help your community? Tell me something you're passionate about, that you could actually help or you want to inform someone about. Just start writing with that pen, and you're just going to have something else to tuck into your journal, and who knows, one of these days you're going to be publishing your work. So thank you for tuning into yWrite. Thank you to Studio 954 for helping put on this production. And I wanted to say I will see you next week, and enjoy your journaling. Have a great day. See you next time.